Hey, what's up, guys? We have Jeremy here. He worked for the NSA and he wants to talk about the workplace environment in the NSA. So how's it going, Jeremy? How you doing today?
I'm doing well, and you?
I'm doing good. Thanks for coming on. And can you tell us a little bit about yourself first, then we'll go from there?
Sure. So I was on a scholarship program called the Scholarship for Service, which was intended to get more technical people into the federal government. And the deal was they give you 2 years of funding if you go work for the federal government, which at the time, the NSA was a big funder of that program. So they were the ones that were hiring a lot of the people. And that's how I ended up with the National Security Agency. And that was way back in 2005. 16 years later, I finally quit. I'd been looking to leave for a long time, but during that whole time, I did everything I could to make them more responsible with the taxpayers' money and as far as reporting things properly, doing the right thing. It was not always a popular position, I'll just say.
And what are you doing now?
Well, right now I am working at a bank for the day job, but I'm promoting my new book, which is called Are You Listening? Subtitle is Lessons in Waste, Abuse, and Mismanagement from the Agency That Doesn't Listen. Uh, at least we'll see if that title survives if I can get it to a publisher. But right now I'm looking for publishers. Finally got an approved version. Fun fact, I'm under lifetime obligation. Anything I would publish about the NSA, I have to send to them for approval first. So they actually have already read my book.
And what do they think about it?
Well, I mean, I think it was a part of the reason why I lost my clearance. So I would say they didn't take it well.
So they're not happy about it. Yeah. I mean,
Somebody, yeah.
I would imagine going against the government wouldn't be an easy task, right?
Well, for the most part, they've more or less played nice. They haven't tried to block too much out of my books. It's been a bit of back and forth. It's actually taken me about 2 years to write the book, send it to them, get some edits in, send it to them again, fight them on the stuff they were redacting, send it in again, and now I have a good version ready to go, essentially.
And what was your job when you got hired in the NSA?
General IT stuff. So I was on the NSA has the exciting part where they do signals intelligence and trying to hack into people's stuff. And I was on the part that made sure the computers were running for the pencil pushers and office bureaucrats. And so nothing too crazy. I would say I did a stint in what's called the interagency OPSEC support staff, where our job was to help train and educate the military, the government, and contractors on how not to give away information carelessly. So that's something that would translate directly into privacy skills, which I recently wrote an article on my website about how to help protect at risk individuals who might accidentally be giving away information when they post online. For instance, not really paying attention to what's behind them in a photo, or if you point a camera at your hand to take a picture of a coin or a bug or a rock, you may upload your fingerprints on the internet. It's something lots of people do by accident. So that was the one job I had at the NSA that I enjoyed the most because I felt like it had real world application and I was actually helping people. And I still do that to this day. I just, on my website, which you've seen.
Yeah, I don't know if we're gonna be able to fix it in during the podcast, but there's a little bit of like a lag. I don't know if you see it on your end. I don't know if there's anything.
No, it's
No,
coming
no lag.
through clearly
Okay.
for me. Sorry.
Okay, no problem. I mean, the audio is fine, so that's pretty much mainly what matters. It's not a big deal. But so then it sounds like you kind of transitioned into more of like a kind of like a workplace culture type position. Is that correct? Like towards and you started kind of like talking about how we could better the NSA, FBI, CIA. Is that correct as your role, or no? Were you just doing that on your own?
Currently or then?
I guess then were you ever kind of in a position of like kind of helping the culture or whatever in the job, or has that just
A,
been after?
a little bit, yes. Basically, I spent a lot of volunteer time talking to other people and to leaders and executives to try to get them to communicate better, to get them to do the right thing. And I was very outspoken, and that made me rather unpopular in some circles and popular in others. At one point, right before I quit, actually, I was elected as a Workforce Matters advocate by the workforce. So I had a semi-official position where it was my job to bring workforce issues to the top management and explain to them how they could do a better job of connecting with people, essentially.
Yeah. And then you mentioned before that like they can literally get your fingerprints from like a picture potentially.
No, everyone can. People post their fingerprints on the internet all the time. Right now, you could look on Etsy where people are, making all their crafts and whatever. And if the image is sufficiently large, you can just open it up and look at their fingerprints. So what I did at the agency is not related to any of that, other than training people how to look for information they're giving away that it didn't mean to. So that was all on the defense side, right? So I would teach, say, military people. This was a big problem back in the day. They would post selfies in front of a supply depot or whatever, without realizing that the photo was geotagged to those precise coordinates. So they're basically painting a target on the munitions depot. And that was basically what that job was. And I really enjoyed that job. So I'm still doing that now. I'm trying to teach everybody else those same skills, how to pay attention to, what's in your background, what do you post, what can I learn from what you post. For instance, people post themselves naked all the time on the internet because they take a picture of something that they're selling or giving away. Oh, check out this TV. I don't need it anymore. Do you want it? And they take a photo. Well, they're naked and you can see it clearly in the reflection of the TV, but people don't think to look at the reflections. So those kinds of skills.
Wow. Yeah, you would really think that they would think about that, and also kind of like why would they be naked, you know? I mean, it's kind of like put some
I
clothes
don't know.
on.
There's websites you can go check called reflecto porn, which is not pornography. It's just people who've accidentally posted themselves nude or semi-nude in in reflections of things. But the cool thing
Oh
about
man.
teaching people these concepts is that once you tell them, they basically never forget. So you basically become a lot safer immediately after you've listened to the kinds of things I have to teach, which is really cool.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean there's tons of ways too that obviously I kind of like know I'm being, I don't know I'm being tracked, but like, you could potentially be tracked. And with all the AI, like the, Chat GPT and like Google Gemini, and like you're asking all these questions, and it's like you're just kind of like going out throughout Google. And I'd say honestly, like I trust Google, and I'm the type of guy who even like I trust the government for the most part. I know a lot of people don't, but I think that's more kind of like I'm really not too worried about anyone coming out for me, mainly because I'm not really doing anything that bad. Obviously, um, you always probably want to have privacy, because I think that the saying is like, you don't know you need privacy until you need privacy, or whatever.
Until it's
That's
too late.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Let me give you a specific example. And with full respect to various religions and beliefs, there are some people whose religion makes them somewhat violent at times. So, for example, a girl who is doing a podcast that her father doesn't know about, and there are signs on her wall that signify things that are not compatible with their beliefs, and he gets angry and hurts her. There are lots of examples of that online. Or maybe the kid is at a party they're not supposed to be at, and one of their friends posts a picture with them in the background. Again, big problems. So it's not that I'm trying to teach kids how to not get attacked by their parents, although that is a good thing. I'm trying to teach everybody how to know how much information they're giving away unintentionally, because there could be consequences from that. One of the examples I have on that article I told you about is a Japanese idol pop star who the reflection in her eyeball showed a street sign that allowed a stalker to find and attack her.
Wow. But I mean, it also can be used for bad, but then it can also be used for good. Like when you're
Certainly.
trying to what what was it?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I mean, it's like if I'm doing something bad, like I mean, I literally know it's like a bad thing to even bring up, but I know, actually, yeah, I know a guy. I have, and it's an acquaintance of a guy who got in trouble. Actually, I know two people, both acquaintances. I'm not very close with them, but got in trouble for like child porn on, like they were going, or not child
Oh,
porn, but
that's
like they were
awful.
like they were hitting on girls on like Snapchat or whatever.
Oh,
And
oh,
it,
oh, okay.
and I think that most people think, oh, it's Snapchat, like everything gets erased, but it's like really it doesn't, right? Like you can still, I'm
Right.
sure somebody has access to that or whatever. They were able to figure it out and they found them. That's obviously a good example. Um, Even with like the Luigi Mangione situation, that's obviously kind of different, but there was like a camera there and it caught him. If there was no camera there, who
Right.
knows? I mean, he may, I don't really know if he,
Or if he just knew that there was a camera there, the whole story could have gone differently. And that's what
yeah.
informed choice is about, right? So my goal is to train people how to protect themselves. And I'm aware that bad guys could use that too, but I'm more concerned about the good guys. I'm more concerned about the common people and their safety and their autonomy, especially in the current climate.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I mean, I think it works. It obviously works both ways, and some people kind of have more trust for the institution. Some people don't. But also in terms of the workplace, like kind of like culture type thing, which is also what it sounds like you're talking about. I've worked for most of the places that I've worked for. In my opinion, I've had a horrible. I don't really know what other word to use besides culture, or like the bosses are just assholes, and it's like you can't really, like you
Us
said,
versus them
what?
is how I
Yeah, exactly.
would put it.
Like you can't really like talk to them about anything, even if you go to HR or whatever, like they just don't really do anything. And some places have honestly been better than others. Like I worked for this company called Loan Depot, which is like this, I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's like this loan company who actually had like a culture, kind of like what you're doing, where they had some guy like make sure the culture was good. And then also even like a company like Amazon, they have a ton of problems, Amazon, but the culture inside seems to be good. Like everyone for the most part is, your bosses for the most part are friendly to you, and I think that comes from the top down. If you don't have anybody at the top telling you to act like that, people won't act like that. They'll just be dicks,
Agreed.
and you
Yeah.
won't be able to talk. So I know where you're coming from when it comes to this. But first of all, let's just get into the NSA itself, and then maybe if you want to go into the CIA or the FBI or whatever. But what exactly? I think most people have a misconception of what exactly the NSA does. They don't really fully, or at least I do. I don't really fully understand what they do. So can you kind of go over what they do?
Sure. Yeah. The public information is accurate. They are the people who one are out there doing hacking and capturing signals and information bits and trying to put that information together to create a picture of intelligence for our leaders to make intelligent choices. For example, I use a fictitious example in my book where a hijacking occurs, but it's actually a state sponsored hijacking meant to look like an extremist group. And if the NSA had been tapping their phones and knew that this was completely bogus and it was state sponsored, they can apply political pressure by proving that they know and threatening them essentially to go public if they don't back down. And that helps get the hostages released and that kind of thing. So the information advantage works for us when our government is out there trying to save people and protect us. And the government has an obligation to protect Americans here and abroad. So if you're traveling and get in trouble, the NSA is out there, spying on the various bad guys, and gives that information to the military and to the executive to make those proper actions. The other thing they do is a defense mission where they know how the bad guys are going to come at us and they try to defend our systems against those same kinds of hacks and those same kinds of gathering that we would use. We don't want to be vulnerable to that because we don't want our adversaries to have that information. So, for example, if they know that there's a critical a vulnerability in an operating system, for example, they might tell Microsoft, "Hey, patch your stuff. We know you have a hole here, and that's going to leave our entire industry vulnerable, our government vulnerable. So fix that." So they actually work in cooperation to help keep us safe, and that's the main goal, at least as far as the books are concerned. And like you, I don't really think that they're evil. They're not evil. They're incompetent. And the most important thing that makes the NSA risky is that they're not exactly, their oversight is not sufficient. So if they did become, if they did go rogue, we wouldn't know, not with the way things are currently. I don't think we're there yet, but hmm,
I mean, do you like? Well, first of all, do you think they're coming after people like me, or not necessarily coming after, but are they ever like really even watching somebody like me who's really, for the most part, not doing anything wrong, or are they really kind of only going after people once they like maybe they think somebody's involved with something, and then they'll go after you, or are they kind of like watching almost? But some people are kind of under the impression that they're like, watching your phones, or like watching, everything kind of. And it's like there's just way too many. I would assume there's just way too many people for them to be kind of constantly watching everybody. I would assume that they would only be going after the people who are suspects or whatever, right? Or am I wrong about that?
no, you're right. The First of all, the agency only has a foreign mandate. They're not allowed to monitor or otherwise get in anybody's business who's stateside. The only way that there's an exception to that is if you are directly connected to an ongoing threat of investigation with a foreign adversary, like a terrorist group or whatever. If, for instance, you're on a phone call with, you know, bad guy, McBad guy, uh, well, yeah, your conversation will probably be recorded. And there are exceptions that they can make to allow somebody to go after you, an American, if your ties to that group are sufficiently demonstrated to the director of the NSA, and I can't remember who else. I may even be remembering that wrong, but it's got some pretty high level authorization that has to happen, and it's a case by case basis. There was a case that Snowden exposed where the NSA was gathering phone call metadata for everyone at random. And that was a huge violation in my concern. And based on the data I have available, that was all proven to be true. Still isn't conversations. They're not recording your conversations, but they are tracking who's calling who and when and that sort of thing. Or at least that's what they were accused of. So to me, I think that's an overstep. And they'll say they're using it responsibly, and it's probably true. But again, the capabilities are only growing ever larger. And the thing that we need to make sure that that doesn't go out of hand is correct oversight. And that is not in place.
Well, I think it's well, you said that Biden was the one who asked for that, right? Is that what you said, Biden?
No,
Or who did you say? It sounded like
Snowden,
you said, or what?
Edward Snowden.
Oh, Snowden. Okay, but it
Yeah,
sounded
the
like you.
famous NSA leaker.
No, yeah, I definitely know about him. But you said that I thought you said one of the presidents asked to watch everybody's phones, or was that
No,
Snowden?
no. The NSA was watching the metadata for phones according to Snowden's leaks.
Oh, okay, okay,
And so that was, back in 2013, I think.
yeah. So when they're doing that kind of thing, what do you think that they're doing it for? Like,
Rapid access to information to be able to follow the bad guy, right? It's sort of like if you wanted to learn about a movie, you can just go online, type something in a search engine, and everything you want is there. You could follow the chains of information forever. If you end up on tvtropes.com, you're screwed. You'll never escape because that place is so interesting. But it's the same idea, but for intelligence, right? If you have the data, then all you have to do is search it. And then you have to be careful about reporting it and doing it within the bounds and whatever, which, based on all reports, they're mostly sticking to.
okay, and then in terms of like the conspiracy theory kind of like stuff, like you said, it's not so much that they're evil, just they're incompetent. I feel like that's kind of like the answer to most of the, in my opinion, that's the answer to like I don't really feel like they haven't. It's almost like the opposite of what people tend to think, which is they have they have so much power they're able to do like whatever they want. It's like no, they're kind of just really incompetent. But in terms of some of the conspiracy theories, like I mean, I don't even really know if Snowden would be considered like a conspiracy theorist because I think that he might have actually had the facts. But in terms of Snowden and then also like Epstein and all this stuff, all these different conspiracy theories, do you feel like most of it's you feel like most of it's incompetence, not just like evil?
There's a simple rule I have for conspiracy theories, and it's based on how many people would have to keep the secret for it to be true. And the more people that it would need to keep a secret for it to be true, the exponentially less likely it is to be true. The only exception to that is that if the people in the organization aren't empowered and to report and protected when they do, then you really can keep thousands or hundreds of thousands of employees quiet, which is why whistleblower protections are absolutely critical. So, generally speaking, if lots of people are involved and nobody has come forward, it's probably not true. But when it comes to the intelligence agencies, bit of a different calculation, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but it's like nobody really wants to be the whistleblower like Snowden who gets caught and then has to like flee to Russia or whatever. So in
Russia, yeah.
terms, yeah, in terms of Snowden, I mean, it kind of almost sounds like most of the information he had, he was able to verify. Is that true, or do you think that he was kind
Um,
of like full of it with some of the stuff?
I would say so. I have to tread carefully here because when I talk about what is true and what isn't true about the NSA, I'm under a legal obligation to not say a lot of things. What I can say is that there was a 60 minutes interview of the NSA after the Snowden thing where they essentially confirmed the things that Snowden was talking about. If you check out that 60-minute interview, the NSA did that interview in cooperation with 60 Minutes and it essentially admitted to it. So basically, from what I can tell, Snowden was right.
And what exactly was he right about? I know you said before the government was, I guess, kind of
Mass
tapping into
collection
everybody's phone.
of data on US persons. You remember, um, so there was a congressional hearing on the director of national intelligence, James Clapper, and he testified that the agency does not collect on US persons. And then it came out that, yeah, we do. He lied to Congress because he says, weasel words, it doesn't actually count as collection unless somebody looks at it even though it was actually in a database. So basically, the controversy was that the NSA was collecting mass data on Americans in general, although it was just phone metadata. So here's a phone number at this time, it called this phone number, stuff like that. Nothing like the contents of your call. Like you said, I'm can't really talk about their capabilities, but I don't think they're there. Let's just say. So, but the phone metadata is still an invasion of privacy at the very least. And I personally don't appreciate the fact that Clapper lied to Congress about it and tried to obfuscate and confuse people. I found that very offensive, even as an employee. And I brought it up several times, which again, not popular with certain people.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. And yeah, so when he said that they had, so was the reason to get the information, his excuse basically was kind of like, we have it, we're not looking at it, but kind of like if we need to look at it, we will. I mean, if they weren't
Yeah,
looking at the
basically.
information, yeah. Yeah, yeah, I don't really know enough about it. What about text messages and stuff?
I'm afraid I don't know it to that detail.
Okay. Like if you were to say something, like I've said stuff as a joke or whatever, and sometimes I'm like, I probably shouldn't have said that over the phone. But if you say something, I guess as a joke that could be taken bad about somebody, could they use that against you? Somebody like higher up, like even if you're just kidding, will they
So
like
what I've
look into
learned
that?
from firsthand experience, unfortunately, and I'll apologize ahead of time because it makes me sound a little like sour grapes and conspiracy theorist of my own. But if you'll do me the honor of just trusting that if you looked at all of the paperwork, this is the conclusion. It is exceedingly easy to paint somebody the way you want with the right information. They did it to me, and it could be easily done to anybody else. So if you've ever known anybody who suffered an injustice where they made some kind of claim based on partial information or something that was actually false, but you couldn't expunge the false data, and they just went with that. Yeah, it's not pretty. But the worst is when they have partial data, because if they can show that you said this, but out of context or without the other things you said, then they can paint you to look like something you're not and hold it against you.
Yeah, and do you think they've ever done anything real? I mean, this is kind of like this could be a controversial question, but do you think they've ever done anything like real serious to where like they literally just wanted to like get rid of somebody and they like you hear stuff
It
like that
happened.
where
It
you hear
happened to
stuff
me and several other people I heard of. Yes.
well
So,
by get rid of I mean like
oh, no,
no
not like that.
no you don't think that ever happens?
No.
Yeah. And it's like a lot of people like I don't know, it's just like a lot of people complain about our government. And don't get me wrong, like there are certain aspects of it that probably are wrong and like they're incompetent and stuff, but like at least I mean it sounds kind of funny, but it's like at least they're not like killing people like that. Like I mean in Russia, I'm pretty sure I've you hear stories of Putin just
Yeah,
offing
not currently.
people. Yeah, not currently. And so, in terms of you mentioned them going rogue, like what would be their main reason for going rogue besides just, I guess, just straight up power or just control over
Look,
the
okay, I got to
the
be honest.
country?
I'm treading as carefully as I can, but right now, our administration doesn't really care a lot about rules or laws, and has demonstrated an immense interest and is currently going after political opponents using all those threats of lawfare that people kept crying about is happening now. And if that isn't curbed, it would be exceedingly simple for the executive to order the NSA, the FBI, the CIA to target Americans who have done nothing wrong. And because the whistleblower protections are not there, we wouldn't know about it
But I mean, why would they go after somebody who did nothing wrong, unless it's like to
because they think they did. I mean, I mean, look at it this way. People of immense power tend to have immense egos as well. And they may decide that wrong means you spoke out against this, or you embarrassed them, or you made them look bad, or you shared a meme that they didn't like. So it's not about what you think you is wrong. It's about what they think is wrong.
So in terms of like some of the conspiracy theories, like like I said, Epstein, and then I guess like JFK at this point is still a question. I'm trying to think of some other popular ones. Do you feel like most of those are, or do you feel like most of those are not true, or do you feel like some of them are true, and the NSA or maybe the CIA or FBI was involved?
I honestly don't know enough about most of those to say. I think that there's a lot of revisionist history, and that's easy to do when you're in control of the information. For example, the way that China has buttoned up the Tiananmen Square massacre, and people who grow up in China today don't even know that that's real. In America, the Japanese internment camps, most people don't know about those, that kind of thing. So a lot of revisionist history, and that is definitely something I'm against. So I do not want to see that kind of information control happen, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And the Tiananmen Square thing, that's I mean here like obviously we're allowed to talk about it and we do, but I mean that's mainly just China, right? Where they don't allow you to even like really bring it up.
Correct. And there are, if I understand correctly, and I don't know this from firsthand knowledge, so this isn't an NSA thing, but you could put yourself at risk looking up the Tiananmen Square or doing searches on it while in China because they have detectors for that. So I hear. I would
Yeah.
I would verify that before going on, but that does fit with Chinese information control and government. So I consider that to be very likely.
Yeah. And I just recently started, I don't know if you've heard of that new AI DeepSeek.
DeepSeek, yes, which I would
Yeah.
not touch for anything.
Oh, you what?
I would absolutely not touch that.
Oh, what's funny is I just did, and like somebody said asking about Tiananmen Square, and obviously it just wouldn't say anything about it. It was like I cannot respond to that. But I
Oh,
mean it's
that's
like
funny.
yeah, Google Gemini and like I probably will delete that DeepSeek one then. Google Gemini and Chat GPT. I mean, there's tons of stuff that they won't even talk about. And it's like my main issue is with those, it's kind of like I understand what they're doing and I understand why they're doing it. It's probably for profit or to not be sued or whatever. But it's like if something really happened, I think that you should be able to talk about it. You know what I mean? Obviously,
I
like
think
if
so, yeah.
yeah, and so it's like if you ask it a question about something that like is true and happened. I mean, I've asked questions, or more so with the image creator things. I've asked questions about stuff that's like in the Bible or whatever, and it like if it's too gruesome, like it just won't do it. And it's like, well, this isn't, this isn't the Bible. Like they teach children about this, you know what I mean? Or like, um, that was just an example. But like anything that really happened should be told as it really happened. Otherwise, you're getting into kind of like weird territory where like you can't talk about stuff that's just reality. And
I mean, I'm sure that there are scenarios where it's best that the general public doesn't know a thing. Nothing comes to mind currently, but that should be the absolute extreme, right? A very, very rare occurrence. It's like limits on free speech. I 100% agree there should be limits on free speech, but those should be extremely rare and for very specific situations. For example, if a political person with a large audience tells a lie about you, your life could be ruined. And there, you would have no recourse if free speech were unlimited, but it's not. There are laws against libel and slander, and those need to be there to protect the normal people from bullies with a microphone.
yeah, exactly. Or any type of like violence, right? Like hate speech or whatever isn't. I don't
Exactly.
think that's protected. And now with X being like, I guess it's like totally like open to free speech, and it's become this like just cesspool of like hate and like
Is it?
swastikas and stuff.
Try saying cisgender on X and see what happens.
It won't let you say that type of stuff. Like
Correct.
the yeah. So it's gone like the full opposite of
Right. So actual hate speech is limited and medical terms are restricted. It's quite interesting to see if I were going to use a neutral word.
yeah, it's gone it's yeah, he's like it's gone full reverse of what it was, which neither one I guess are good. It should be like in the middle. But what do you think about was there anything on his whole I almost like was gonna do it. I'm like I shouldn't even do it. His whole Nazi salute or Roman salute, Elon Musk whole Roman salute thing. Like what do you think
Remember when I said I'm not a fan of revisionist history? It's a Nazi salute. You can see it. It's on video.
yeah,
And people
twice.
trying to say that's not what it is, he did it twice. There's no ambiguity there. So
Yeah.
that's a problem. And the fact that people aren't disavowing that means they're okay with it. And that's also a problem.
Yeah. Does the NSA or any government institution look into anything like that? Like, is there any kind of recourse for doing that? Or,
No, no. Doing a Nazi salute might put you on a watch list, or people will raise eyebrows at the FBI if they think you're part of a terror group, a domestic terror group, or somebody plotting something. But otherwise, it's just ill-advised. All right. They're not going to go after you because you have a reverse swastika on your car or something. You have to have actually done something or be associated with somebody who does, or be a clear and present threat of some kind because they too don't have the resources to go after you. And I'm not speaking from intense firsthand knowledge, but that's the charter of the FBI and that's how they work. It's just like what you said before. They just don't have either the interest, the time, or the resources to go after every person that does a Sig Heil, especially if they're rich and influential, until they actually do something.
but I kind of feel like somebody like I understand if I do it right now, they're probably not going to come after me. But like somebody like Elon Musk, who's at the presidential inauguration doing it, like I know you probably can't like imprison him or anything, which is fine because I guess you should be able to do whatever physical movement you want, but you think they might like have some eyes on him or something because I have heard that I mean, who knows what's going on with him, but I don't really know why you would do that in that scenario. It didn't really seem like a joke. And like when I first saw it, honestly, I'm not even really trying to defend him, because at this point I think he's totally gone off the rails. But I was kind of like he almost seemed like he was, he has Asperger's or whatever, and he almost seemed like it all. I don't really want to say it was a mistake. I was watching it again. I don't think it was a mistake, but I was like maybe it was some sort of mistake or something. But
No,
it's like,
it wasn't a mistake. It might have been impulse control. So if you think about people with Asperger's and various other conditions like that, they have impulse control problems. They'll say things they didn't mean to. They'll do things they didn't mean to, but those aren't things they wouldn't do. It's just things they didn't think would be a problem, right? So if he did that, if he does a Nazi salute, it's because he does Nazi salutes and he supports that. What if anything, if he has any kind of condition or impulse control, he might have thought better about doing it in that scenario. But having Asperger's or autism does not make you salute Nazis under any circumstances unless you already are a Nazi or a
Well, I'm not.
sympathizer.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm not trying to defend him, but I didn't necessarily think that it would have him just randomly do that, but I thought, yeah, no, I totally see what you're saying, and yeah, you're correct about that. Even if he did it almost kind of like accidentally, he still did that salute. But it seems like we're living in a world where it's very weird. Like people are, I kind of feel like 20 years ago, if somebody there did that, it would, I almost feel like it would be a big deal.
It would be a big deal, yeah.
But now it's kind of like, oh, he just did it, and then you have his defenders who just love Tesla, and
People are tired, man. They're so tired.
like, what do you mean? Like they're just tired of it, or tired just in
There,
general? Like they just don't have enough energy to
there,
like go after anybody.
there are so many battles and tests of our limits that we can't respond to them all.
Yeah,
The only thing that, for instance, that I can do is call it like I see it and maintain that yes, this was a Nazi salute and Elon is a Nazi. Um, and
you really
and
think that he is a Nazi?
he's wearing their gestures. That's all I can say. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
all I know is, at the very least, nobody who's not a Nazi does that. So
yeah. Unless it's some sort of weird.
maybe he thought it was cool, like naming the Department of Government Efficiency after an internet meme. But at the very least, it was quite stupid to do. And
Yeah.
the fact that he didn't disavow it and the fact that he hasn't apologized means he's either a Nazi or a Nazi sympathizer. It's the Nazi dinner table problem. You familiar with it?
No.
If nine people are sitting at a dinner table and a Nazi sits down and nobody gets up and leaves, there's a dinner with 10 Nazis.
Yeah, yeah. What do you think about Trump? I know like some. It seems like you said. It seems like people are tired, and they just don't have the energy to fight anymore. And in a way, I mean, in a way that's kind of good because we don't want like infighting in the country. But I know during the first president Trump's presidency, people were scared he was going to go like totally crazy, and it seems like this time he kind of is. And I think people are almost just to the point where like they're like just what can we do about it? But what do you? I mean, I tend to be naive when it comes to this stuff. I'm like, oh, we live in this great country that hasn't really wronged me yet. But what do you think about the future of this country with Trump? How do you see it playing out?
We're doomed.
You think so?
100%. If what he is doing is not curbed, stopped, or reversed, this country cannot survive. He is dismantling the government. He's handing power to the rich and to foreign adversaries. It's not an accident that he cozies up to our adversaries and insults our allies. The dude is unhinged, and he's basically getting rid of every mechanism of control, oversight, and balance that we have. And those were already in trouble. I was just telling you that whistleblowers are a problem. Trump is the guy who was telling people that if they either lied or didn't testify against him, he would pardon them and he would go after the people who testified against him, which he has done already since he's been in office. So yeah, it's the most danger I've ever seen in this country. It's unreal and unheard of. I mean, when I was in the NSA, I had rules about how what I could say politically and a level of gifts I could accept was like $20. Anything over $20, I wasn't allowed to take. Trump is literally enriching himself off the office. He doesn't care about anyone except himself,
Well,
and
it's kind of
that's
crazy
wildly dangerous.
because, like you just said, you can only take a $20 tip. I, as an Amazon delivery driver, literally cannot take a tip, but the president is somehow able to enrich himself off being the president. Like, because he's allowed to take as much money as he can, right? I think there's a limit to like one person giving or something, right? But besides that, he can just take as much money for himself. Like, how is there not a rule against enriching yourself?
I think there is, but those rules are only as good as people who enforce them. And right now, the Supreme Court is compromised, and Congress
Uh,
is compromised in the same way that the NSA was. Because what happens is you have a system that encourages erosion of your morality and your values. So the longer you're in Congress, unless you're Bernie Sanders, who I don't know what happened to him, but that guy's a crusader, um, the more likely you are to start listening to special interests taking money from the what's the nice word for bribery? Um, Super PAC? What do they call them? I can't remember. But those people who, oh, the lobbyists, right? So basically, what happens is there's a reason that so many people in Congress are rich and they fight so hard to stay there because the longer you're there, the more bought you become. You become corrupted by the system, which is why things like term limits are so important. What things like whistleblower protections are so important. They want to keep as much to themselves as they can because they're dirty as crap. Or at the very least, it's too easy to be dirty as crap. Let's just put it that way to be fair. I don't want to paint with too broad a brush, if that makes sense.
yeah. And so so in terms of the future of the country, we've heard, and I think well, first of all, what the biggest thing that like surprises me is I have a ton of friends, I have family who, and I'm not a Trump supporter, but my family is, and they're doing so much crazy shit that it's gone to a point where I don't know how you can defend it. Like we said with the Nazi salute, with like wanting to dismantle the FBI. With I've heard, I don't even really know what's fully going on, but supposedly
It's
they want.
reached cult levels. I mean, let's be honest.
It's absolutely insane. And I asked my dad on the day of his. We went to like lunch on the day of, and I try to like stay away from arguments with him, but and I asked him on the day of the president his inauguration. I was like, how do you feel about Trump? And he's like, I'm so excited. It's the best day. And they think that this is the only thing that's going to. They think the opposite of us. They think this is
Yeah.
the only thing that's going to save America is getting rid of the illegal immigrant. I think that's the main thing. I think the main thing, the only thing like I can really just not justify it with, but like think they must think this is so important to get rid of illegal immigrants who are doing probably like minimum wage jobs or whatever. But that's the biggest thing to them is that, and then none of the other stuff really makes sense. Like taking over Canada, or I don't know if he wants to buy Canada or take it over, or buying Greenland or taking it over. All this shit, like getting rid of, like I've heard from my friend who works in the public schools, getting rid of the public schools. So how do you see all this playing out? And you say it's bad, but like, what do you think he's really going to have any success with dismantling the FBI, with getting rid of so many government workers, with
Well, who's
getting
going
rid
to
of?
stop him?
Well, I mean, I think there was people there to stop him last time, but I guess this time there just isn't people there to stop him. You have,
Well, we already know the Supreme Court won't. There's too many people on the Supreme Court that are essentially MAGA loyalists. And then you have the Congress where they're not stopping completely unqualified nominations like Hegseth and Nome. And RFK Jr. is now looking to be confirmed, who's completely unqualified. These are all people who are looking to dismantle the protections and do what they can to protect Trump. What you're seeing is the rise of loyalism to a person. And there is nothing more dangerous than loyalism to a person or a government or an office or an institution. Your loyalty should be to your values, which means nobody is safe. That sounds very threatening. Let me explain. If I found out that my good friend was a literal child molester, I would cut him off immediately. My loyalty for him has ended because of the things he has done. But if you're a loyalist, they can't do anything that would make you turn away from them. You will be loyal to them no matter what. And that is the kind of fervor that I see behind Trump supporters.
yeah. And I listened to like a debate between like Ben Shapiro and Sam Harris, like right before the inauguration, or whoever won or whatever. And I don't know if you listen to that debate, or if you know who those people. Do you know Ben Shapiro
I
or
do.
Sam Harris?
Not that one.
Yeah. So they debated, and Shapiro was basically like saying, like, yeah, he's bullshitting, but I don't really think that like like he's okay. Like it's basically his defense. It's like the stuff he's saying is crazy. Most of it's crazy, but it's bullshit, and it's not going to happen, and it's going to be just like it was before. And it's like that's your defense of the guy. Your defense is that he's just bullshit. He's a bullshit artist. He's not really going to do what he's saying he's going to do. Why the fuck would you want somebody in who's not even going to say what they want to do? Or it just doesn't make any sense to
You
me.
know, it doesn't make any sense to me either.
And at this point, it sounds like by what you're saying is it's not bullshit. He's going to be. They do. I mean, there's no way he's probably going to take over. I don't know. Does he want to buy Canada or does he want to take it over? Do you know? And
All I know
Greenland.
is that legally he's in charge of nukes and the military. He is the head of the military, and he will remove people who are qualified and who oppose him and replace them with loyalists, again, if nobody stops him. So basically, what happens is he just keeps pushing the boundaries. And as long as people keep giving ground, things are going to become worse and worse and worse. And it's going to be easier for him to do whatever he wants. For instance, have no more elections. They're already dismantling election protections. I heard that, yesterday, today,
Are
whatever.
they?
Yeah. Well, let me put it this way. I saw something that said that. I'm not gonna bullshit you and say, oh, I looked into this. I know a lot about it. I don't. But I believe it because he's already violated the integrity of our elections and has been for years with his constant stream of bullshit and lies.
Yeah. So when if that actually happens, which all this stuff is kind of like let's hope it doesn't happen. But if it does happen, do you think that he'll? I mean, I'm assuming he just wants to stay in, and then like when he dies, like his son will take over,
Probably.
or that's what I've heard is Donald Trump Jr. will just be the next guy, I guess,
I mean,
or even
unless somebody stops him. I mean, I don't know. I,
yeah,
I
no,
I really don't know what'll happen. I just know that we're in a precarious situation. The danger is that we have so many people in our government who are in positions of power who have no values, no morals. They will say whatever they want that's opportunistic for them. They're eating dogs and cats, Jewish space lasers, and stolen election. Oh, we turned on a giant faucet in California and that fixed the wildfires. Just constant stream of lies, and they gaslight so hard and so frequently, and there are enough big names on TV who repeat the lies that, yeah, of course there's Trump supporters who think this is a good thing because everyone is saying it. You have people in literal Congress people are supposed to be consummate professionals. And we have these morons who are spouting this nonsense about weather control. Come on.
yeah, it's absolutely craziness. Like I'm close to I'm like over an hour away from the fires. But like when that all happened, it's like to me in my mind, it's like, well, obviously this is global warming of some sort. And I know fires have always happened, and I'm not saying that like it's doomsday, but
Yeah,
it's
it was
like
the wind that was the problem.
yeah, it's the wind. Well, yeah, if not even global warming, it was just the wind. It was a natural disaster, just like in Florida with the hurricanes or whatever. And then you have people saying, "Oh, it's bullshit. Like it's either weather control or it's the homeless, like just like all their shit, like littered around, or it's like somebody started it, or it's the government
The
just started
windmills,
it."
man, it's the windmills.
Yeah, and it's like, how do you guys jump to these crazy, conclusions? I have to ask about the drones too. What was the deal with the drones? Are those done now, or like do you remember hearing about?
Yeah, I know about the drones, and it's just classic hysteria accentuated by irresponsible journalism. They were airplanes, they were drones. And so what? They were drones. I have a relative who is a licensed drone operator. He flies a drone around. He does it for racing, he does it for inspecting buildings, he does programming for them. He flew in a commercial once. People can buy drones at a store. This isn't some great scandal. Barring any extra information, it was much ado about absolutely fucking nothing. Do you care if I curse on your show? Sorry.
No, no, no,
Okay.
no. I think I already have, but yeah. I mean, that's kind of like what I was thinking. But I also fly drones, I have a drone, and some of these I can see how some of this was like doctored or whatever, and I'm sure with AI and everything else going on, all of this could be doctored, but some of it really, even to me, somebody who knows about drones a good amount, it looked kind of weird. And I'm not saying I totally believe it. I'm sure there was an explanation for it.
I won't hold it against you. It's fine. It's just that skepticism is the best position, barring extra evidence or a strong argument. For example, people who were talking about the De Beers diamonds conspiracy before it became publicly known, well, that also makes sense. So it's fair to actually believe in that, even if you don't have 100% evidence. What's wrong is when people talk like it's true when you don't have concrete evidence. I can suppose that, for example, deep state or whatever the hell it's called from China is full of backdoors and it's going to allow China to steal a lot of information. I don't actually know that for a fact. So maybe that's a conspiracy. I'd say it's a logical assumption based on past history, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's crazy too with DeepSeek. Like it's like there's a literal app for it, and but as soon as I heard about it, I went because I use these chatbots all the time, so I like went and looked for it. It's in the Apple App Store, which is, I think they're like pretty like, you know, they don't allow everything in, and it's weird because like they were just wanting to get rid of TikTok. I've heard about them wanting to get rid of DJI drones, which I have the Chinese drone company, but now they're allowing DeepSeek. It's just like this doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean? It's like how are we allowing Chinese owned companies to just be on our iPhones? You know what I mean? It's like, and then what happened? Do you know what happened with the TikTok thing? I don't know if you followed that at all, but basically they said they were going to shut it down. And then the night that it was supposed to be shut down, it got shut down for like 8 hours. But then it came back up and said, thanks to Donald Trump, we've reinstated TikTok. And it just seemed like bullshit. It's like nothing
It was a
happens.
lie.
Yeah, nothing
Donald Trump was the one
happens.
who instituted the ban.
Yeah. But then it's like now all of a sudden it's turned around and Trump is supposedly, according to them, backing it. And
Right.
it's like, it's just nothing. It's like, what's going on? Like, you know
I
what I
think
mean?
they
It's
shut
like,
it down on purpose to give an advantage to Trump as a political maneuver. They're currying favor from Trump by making it helping him look like the savior when he actually did nothing, when he actually caused the problem. Which is funny because that was actually the right choice. Now, in my view, you don't shut things down until you come up with some kind of alternative. You come up with a plan to help people who would be affected by it. But loosening TikTok's grip and the Chinese grip on American industry is vitally important. They're invading us through our economy. And that is a documented problem. For example, the FBI on their website, they talk about the risk of the Chinese state intrusion into government systems, American companies, that kind of thing. They will literally send people to America, send them to schools here to get jobs to do espionage and take that back to China. And if you do business in China, by law, they can access all of your business records that exist in China. They can access all of your traffic.
yeah, that's crazy. And like I was saying, with one of these chatbots, it's like I was saying, like you just ask a bunch of questions, you give it all your information, you know, and I'll probably stop using it. But yeah, it's getting crazy out there. Do you think that Trump will have? Yeah, so yeah, and then now like with all these, it seems like a lot of these tech CEOs or whatever, like Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg and everybody else, they seem to be kind of like backing. I don't know if they're really, well, obviously Elon Musk is backing Trump, but Mark Zuckerberg seems to be kind of like they were on Bezos, they were all at the inauguration or whatever. And I think that's like a big problem. I think that they're probably just trying to get more money.
Currying favor.
Yeah, right. And it's probably just really going to get out of hand. And then with the cryptocurrency and all that, it's all just going to go crazy, right?
It's all just business, except for Elon. Elon is a true believer. The others, I think they're just opportunists. They're just going the way the wind blows.
It's just crazy though that to do that at the potential expense of your country. You know what I mean? It's like
They
Mark
don't care.
Zuckerberg.
Why would they care, man? They got money.
Well, they got money, but it's like if the whole country goes to shit, then it's like what are they going to do? Like
Fly
move?
away.
Yeah, I mean that's crazy, man. At what point does money just shouldn't matter anymore. Like if you're Elon Musk, if you're Mark Zuckerberg, if you're one of those guys, Bezos, you have enough money. It's like at what point do you need more money? It just seems like it's like at some point you just got to
It's
stop.
a personality flaw at some point. The the only billionaire I know that was responsible with their wealth was Dolly Parton, who reportedly gave away money to the degree that she's never actually been a billionaire, but she would have if she hadn't been so philanthropic, something.
Oh wow, that's I didn't know about that. What do you think about?
I read that somewhere, and I should probably confirm it before telling the story, but I believe it because of her character. And but realistically, I've pretty much come to the conclusion that billionaires are by default abusers of the system. They couldn't exist otherwise, with maybe the exception of Taylor Swift, who seems to just be that popular.
Yeah. Sorry, what was that? They're all what of the system?
Abusers of the system.
Oh, okay, okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. So instead of just really naturally being that popular, you think that most of them have just kind of like grifted their way into like elite success kind of thing? Like,
Essentially, yes.
yeah,
Think of it like somebody who, as soon as the lane of their traffic slows down, they immediately switch to the other lane, even if it's a close call and causes people to slow down, slam on their brakes, causes accidents. At least they got by the traffic, right? As
yeah.
long as it's good for them, they'll just keep going.
Well, yeah, there's the whole thing with humans where it's like no matter where you get to, you kind of always want more. So even if you have like not all, I'm not saying all humans are like that, but it's like it kind of seems to be a thing. And these people are just the extreme version of that, where it's like no matter how much they have, they just
Wealth
want
is,
more and more and more.
in my view, wealth is like a great magnifier. It magnifies your worst impulses. So if you don't have a strong firewall of morality, values, and perspective, especially perspective, you'll lose it all. Let me give you an example. When I this is a you're going to have to trust me that this kind of makes sense. It'll seem like a great diversion, but at the NSA, we had a problem where a lot of the people who had been there a long time, 20, 30 years, they had a nice house, they had cars, they had good money, and they'd so long since forgotten what it's like to struggle and so long since forgotten, been separated from things like having student loans or having to pay rent or a mortgage, when they had theirs set 30 years ago, that they assume that everybody else is just lazy, stupid, and incompetent if they complain about not making enough money. They would say things like, well, if you would stop buying all those lattes and those avocado toast, literally, they would say this. It's kind of absurd how often people talked about lattes when they were talking about entitlement of the youth. But the thing is, I think everybody's like that. We all forget where we came from. When I wrote my book, I actually had to struggle to remember how scared and unstable I was all the time financially when I first started at the agency. Picking up uh, furniture on the side of the road, cleaning it up, bringing it in the house. That's, where I got my good stuff. Just all of the things I had to do to save money. I bought cars that were so bad the brakes went out on me. I went through an intersection, almost crashed on the highway. Actually happened 3 times because it was all I could do. But there's no respect for that struggle when you become comfortable and don't put in the work to maintain a connection to the people that are coming after you, to the struggle of the common man. So when you're ultra wealthy, that distance becomes absurd. So you look at literally everyone else who's struggling and say, hey, I did it. Why can't you? When they didn't do anything, they were opportunists like Thomas Edison, who used all of the inventions of Nikola Tesla to become extremely wealthy because he was a good businessman and promoter. He didn't actually invent anything. He didn't do anything of any particular significance. I'm grossly over, that's the loose interpretation of the things, but same basic idea. Like how Elon didn't actually invent anything, he bought companies. That's what he did. None of these are his invention. None of them are his work. The only thing he actually bought was Twitter. And look what happened to that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just it's it's absolutely crazy though that somebody like Elon Musk could become that. Because I've heard all this and I believe it, but it's absolutely crazy that somebody can become that rich off of like really kind of doing nothing on his own. Besides, I guess you
Yeah.
can say he's like he must be really good at like controlling people or like controlling what people do and getting them to do what he wants. But I mean, could you imagine being one of the people who's actually behind the rocket launch, who's actually doing? And I've heard that he does do some engineering, but could you imagine being one of the people who's behind the rocket launches and the building of the Teslas and all this shit, and then it's like you get Elon Musk just getting all like just all the credit, and it just seems like somebody would come out, and obviously they probably can't unless they quit or whatever. And I mean, honestly, it sounds like a similar thing. Something weird's going on over at OpenAI too, where it's like, I like Sam Altman. He seems like a good guy. I don't know how much you know about OpenAI and all that kind of stuff, the AI stuff, but it's like Sam Altman seems like a good guy, but it seems like people just keep quitting and people keep saying how bad of a company it is because they're essentially just having these workers do all the work and they're just like profiting off of it. You know what I mean? It's with all these big tech companies. It's like the person,
Exploitation is the model. Amazon's
yeah,
a perfect example. The abuses in the warehouses or where Walmart is closing stores that try to unionize, Starbucks does the same thing. It's it's all extremely sketchy, but there's zero oversight because the government is supposed to protect us from that, but they're not good enough at their job.
yeah. So getting, yeah, I definitely want to get to that, because I think that's like the main point of all this is how they could be better at their job. Yeah. So how do you feel like working in there? So it sounds like you were there for 16 years, and then it sounds like after 16 years they got rid of you. They let you go or whatever, probably for being too loud of a whistleblower. Is that correct? Or
Based on the paperwork they gave me, yes. They see, how do I put this in very short terms? So basically, they falsified the security records, and in a way that I was able to prove because I had access to my security records also. So I could tell that they used partial information or miswrote things. They also included some straight up lies and a couple of points that were really desperate and very obviously inconsequential. The end result is that I said I supported whistleblowing and I was writing a book. And based on what they wrote, that was what they really considered a threat. And that logically can be the only reason that they pulled my clearance.
yeah. So now, how do you? It sounds like now you is your book finished now?
Yes, I'm looking for publishers.
Okay. So now, I mean, what do you think the right way? Well, first of all, I want to ask you, with all this crazy stuff that's going on with Trump and the drones and Elon Musk and all this stuff, is NSA, FBI, CIA, are they kind of like worried a little bit? Are they kind of like, because he supposedly wants to dismantle the FBI, I've heard, right? Vivek Ramaswamy wants to do that. So are they kind of like worried? Like are they gonna try and get rid of us? Or I mean, how are they reacting to all this stuff going on in politics?
I can't imagine anything that they would do other than roll over.
But I mean, don't they have enough power? And it sounds like you're saying no, they don't because the Supreme Court is in Trump's favor, but you would almost think the FBI would have enough power or the CIA or the NSA to kind of like start to do something about it. Be like, we gotta like, we gotta act. You know what I mean? Otherwise, they're gonna lose their jobs or whatever, right?
No, well, let me give you an example. So, in the Bush spying controversy of George Bush Jr., whatever his name was, W, that was in 2007, and there were claims about the NSA that had that overstepped their bounds. I honestly don't remember the details, but the bottom line is the NSA's response to that, after having been caught red-handed, was, well, the lawyers approved it. So I, I don't think they're going to do anything. If somebody decides to dismantle them, then that's what'll happen. And I don't think they're going to try to stand up to it. I don't think they're going to try to block it. I mean, the organization is going to fall in line with whatever the lawyers and the people at the top say. So if they install a Trump loyalist and he says, I want to cut this department and this department, especially if they do it slowly like that in pieces instead of all at once, then that's it. It'll just go away.
Yeah, it's crazy to me too when Trump got his, did he get like 12 felonies or whatever? A lot of
34.
people 34 felonies. A lot of people, obviously his loyalists, were saying they were just going after him for bullshit or whatever. But for one, it seems crazy to me that they couldn't actually get him on anything that like ended him. Like it's like they went after like a lot of his like other guys, like I'm forgetting their names, but some of the guys who actually went to prison for him, they got
Right.
them. But for whatever reason, they were never really able to get Trump. It's like, and I don't see him that as being that smart of a mastermind to be able to
He's
like,
not.
yeah. So how are
It's
they not able to bring him down? Like who am I
it's
forgetting?
politics and loyalism. It's because he had too many supporters, and it became too much of a risk to go after him. Essentially, you know,
Yeah,
his loyalists are dangerous people. There have been various attacks by his people on other people, especially on. I mean, he's calling for beheadings and various other things. It's insane.
beheadings.
If I recall correctly, let me see if I can look it up real quick. Yeah, he was talking about people being executed. We should execute XYZ. Let's see.
And then what do you think about the whole Ross Ulbricht? Him letting Ross Ulbricht out of prison, like that to me seems kind of weird. It's like
I'm not
why
sure who that is.
Ross Ulbricht is the guy who started like the Silk Road on the dark web. So he got
Oh, yeah, I didn't have a lot of connection with that. What I know is that I believe in the rule of law. I faithfully kept my responsibilities for what I was supposed to do, and I find it particularly offensive that other people can get away with all that because they happen to be rich and connected.
yeah. So this guy, yeah, this guy, I don't really know exactly what. Like, I mean, to be honest with you, I don't really think that selling drugs on the dark web is that. I mean, it is a big deal, but it's. I don't know if I've heard that he may have had people killed. I've heard a lot of shit went down with this guy. He looks like a nice guy. He looks obviously you can't go off looks, but yeah, Trump had him pardoned. And in my mind, I'm kind of like, why is this a good thing that you're having this guy who is operating on the dark web, doing crazy shit on the dark web, pardoned? Like, I would almost think that even Republicans wouldn't necessarily be for that, but I guess I know like the libertarians are because they're all for like,
Yeah, they're crazy. They
yeah,
just they believe that they could survive without government, and we shouldn't have government when that's anyway. Yeah,
yeah,
Trump pardons people that are loyal to him, and it doesn't matter what they do. I mean,
yeah.
all the January 6th rioters who attacked and beat police, they've all been pardoned. And yeah, some of the Republicans have objected to that, but wagging your finger and saying, "I think he's learned his lesson," that doesn't accomplish anything. So the depth of their sincerity couldn't sink a penny.
Yeah. So he probably just plans on Ross Ulbricht like going on Joe Rogan and being like, "Hey, Trump pardoned me, and I love Trump, and blah blah blah." And
Yeah, and that would be all he needs to justify that.
yeah. So, yeah, I want to make sure we get to what the NSA can do better, because I think that's the main reason why you came on. I find all this other stuff fascinating, and I think it somehow relates to NSA. But yeah. So, I mean, what do you think? What do you think their move is like going forward?
Well, the fun fact is that everything that's wrong with the NSA is wrong with every company. Uh, I've worked at a few places since then, no exceptions. The same
Yeah.
issues exist everywhere. And the problem is that the executive and the management treat the employees like adversaries, like they constantly have to be on guard. They don't trust us with information. They don't trust us to advise them. They don't ask us for our opinions, even when our opinions really matter. And I'll give you an example. So the NSA implemented an open plan office system that absolutely destroyed the ability for analysts, computer hackers, and other people who require intense concentration to actually do their work. It was one of the most objectively stupid things I'd ever seen. And yet they kept pushing it through because they'd already sunk the money in, or somebody got promoted and they didn't want to make them look bad, or whatever. Basically it became all about posturing and appearance and not about actually doing the right thing. And if they had ever actually talked to the workforce, if they had involved the stakeholders, the people that affects, we could have told them this is a really stupid idea, don't do this. But then at some point they committed, and then they wouldn't back down because they will never admit fault.
Yeah, the whole system is weird. And like I said, like I said and you just said, like you deal with it everywhere. It's not just the government. In my opinion, some of the companies I've worked for are just,
Well, return to office. Has there ever been a case where it actually was a business justified decision and not vanity?
what do you mean?
So all these companies that are making remote workers come back to the office, there's never been a case where I've heard that there was a business justification for that. They just didn't want to walk around the office and see it empty. It offended their vanity.
Yeah, like I mean, in that situation, I can kind of, well, I don't know. I definitely don't agree with it, but I can kind of understand how it's a little bit more than vanity. If like you kind of need people, like you probably do need some people to actually be at work as opposed to
Sure,
home.
a few.
But at the same time, I totally agree with you. I think it does probably, you probably are right. It does probably come down to control because, so yeah, I've worked a lot of different jobs, like, like you said, and most of them were bad. And they wouldn't ever tell you what they're doing or why they're doing it. Somebody at the top would just make the decision, and then it ended up being like a horrible decision for everybody at the bottom. And so it finally got to a point where like I just couldn't take it anymore. And now I like literally am just delivering for Amazon Flex. And it's like I think the main difference is like I'm my own boss now. Like, yeah, it's
Right.
not the greatest job and I don't get benefits and whatever else, but it's like I'm completely in control over my
Yeah.
life and my job and my
And that has value.
deliveries. And that has value, exactly. And even though I don't even really like Amazon, I'm not really proud of like still, but still, people need their packages and I need to deliver it to them. But I think the main thing is I don't have somebody fucking over my shoulder 24/7
Right.
watching me and telling me what to do and telling me I'm doing it the wrong way. And has it mattered? No. I've still delivered all the fucking packages. But it's like when you work in the Amazon warehouse, you have they were literally got down, like I said, the culture was pretty good there in terms of them being like nice. But it literally got down, they had this thing called time off task, where it's like if they saw that you were time off task for longer than 5 minutes or whatever it was, they would come talk to you and give you a write up or whatever. So like there would be times where you literally went to the bathroom
Right. I've
and they
heard.
and you would come back and then in I was also a delivery driver for Amazon, and you would have, no joke, piss in the bottles. That's all true.
Yep. I
I
didn't
never
doubt
like,
it for a second.
yeah, like luckily I never had to go number two, and I wouldn't, but it's like pissing in the bottles all day long. You couldn't take any breaks. Like if you weren't, and the whole thing is you're lined up to everybody else. So if you're
Right.
taking any breaks, like legitimate breaks, and you come back later than the other person, they're going to be mad at you. And giving you just shitty vehicles to drive in, unsafe vehicles when their whole thing was all about being safe. So yeah, anyways, I understand where you're coming from with that 100%. I could totally see how the NSA would be no different, but it's like even more important because you're dealing with something that's like way more important. You're dealing with
National
like,
security. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, so I mean, what are the types of things that they could do in your, what have you said in your book that they should be doing? What are the types of things that you've gone when you've gone these when you've given these public speeches to the FBI and everybody else? Like, what are you saying that needs to happen? Are they listening at all? Or
Yeah, the key is that you need to collaborate and include with your workforce, essentially, because the workforce is supposed to be smarter than you. If you're a manager or a leader, you're not the best at the job. You can't be. How could you? Because you're not doing it day in, day out every day. You're not on the front line, so you don't see the problems. A frontline worker like you might see an electrical fault in the warehouse. And if you're not empowered to actually say anything about it, well, you won't. And then the warehouse catches on fire and people die. And that's the fault of management for not clearing space for you to have reported it, essentially.
yeah, and yeah, and like I said before, and what you said, I like there was. I mean, I never even went to HR at Amazon or before Amazon. I didn't even deal with it, but HR like literally has an HR department to go to whenever you want, and that would be like one excuse basically to like stop working or whatever. So I actually went to them multiple times, but like it just never seemed like they did anything about it. And I think that's the big problem with what we're talking about, the country as a whole, jobs as a whole, everything. It's like you try and say something, you try and do something, and nothing seems to fucking work.
Nothing gets done. Yeah, there's no accountability, and that's the other thing, because a lot of my book depends on a manager, a leader, an executive actually having an authentic desire to be good at their job and lead well. But not everybody is authentic. Not everybody is anything other than an abuser, an opportunist, a flunky. And those people need to be identified and removed. So when I had a manager who did a had a survey on the site and it destroyed him. He had no idea things were that bad, but that's his fault. It's his fault he didn't know they were that bad. Every time you see those CEO undercover boss, do you ever see one of those?
I don't know if I've ever seen one, but I've
You're
definitely,
familiar
yeah,
with the
heard of it.
concept?
Yeah.
Yeah, dress up and go into the stores and see how things really are. Well, why didn't they
Yeah.
do that before? What was preventing them from getting down there and looking or creating lines of communication so people could say, hey, we have to pee in bottles? Every time they went on the TV and said, man, I didn't know, I said, well, you're an idiot because you should have known. And the only reason you're not knowing is because your people aren't talking. And if your people aren't talking, it's because you haven't cleared the path for them to do so. And that is
Yeah.
your job as an exec.
Yeah. And in order to be able to go to the bathroom, I mean, honestly, I was going to the bathroom multiple times. It takes, like, obviously when you're driving around, you have to go find a bathroom or whatever. It takes time. Like that takes,
Yeah, the warehouses are huge. It take you 5 minutes just to get there.
yeah, not only the warehouses, but even when I was driving those blue vans.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
okay.
yeah, I mean, it would take exact 15 minutes to get to a bathroom and then back or whatever. And they're obviously not accounting for that. They're like, we want you to finish in 8 hours and period. And if you don't, like, you're late and you're in trouble. But like, you literally don't have time to go to the bathroom. You don't have time to do anything. You barely even have enough time to fucking
Right. They
eat.
didn't put any time in the schedule for people who aren't robots.
Exactly. And then when people do complain on literal national television, they're like, oh, we didn't know. But it's like, now that you know, have you changed stuff now?
Yeah,
Probably
but
not.
that's the thing, right? Because the moment they say they don't know, that's still an admission of fault because they should have known.
Yeah. Yeah. I think from what I've seen in the workplace when I'm working with other people, the whole thing seems like some sort of weird political, like kiss ass type thing where like everybody's just trying to work their way up the ladder, and they're doing that by essentially just following the rules and not being a whistleblower like you. They're just kissing ass, and they're telling their boss what they want to hear, then that boss is telling their boss what they want to hear, and nothing gets done. So
Yes.
you need somebody like you, which you're doing a great thing by doing this. I mean,
Oh,
it
thank
takes
you.
balls. Yeah, it takes balls to go out there and be that whistleblower, because most people don't want to be that, and they definitely don't want to get in trouble for doing that. Um, so while you were in there and you were talking to people about it, I mean, were they listening at all? It sounds like you said some people agreed with you and some people
Mm,
didn't, but
sometimes I did have some leaders ask me to mentor them and do some reverse mentoring on the communicating with the workforce, and I was getting pretty decent penetration with some people. Um, I will say that my approach early on was kind of antagonistic, so it tended to make people defensive. Did not work very well, but over time I got better at it, and it was making a dent. So I thought it was going pretty well, but there are definitely people who are not looking to be better. I had the NSA chief of staff call me once after I posted something about this problem, and he wanted to talk about it, but what he meant was he wanted to lecture me about it and explain why I was wrong. Had no interest in hearing what I had to say or entertaining the fact that I was telling him this is a mistake and we should not be doing it.
yeah. Yeah, nobody wants to admit that they're wrong, because if they admit they're
Well,
wrong, then they get in trouble, right?
a
So they
good
just come up
leader
with a
will,
scapegoat. A
because
good
that
leader,
is what
yeah.
good leadership is. It's what being a good person is. If, for instance, I talked a lot about my beliefs about the administration and the people in it, and if they prove me wrong, then I will relent because my values are value based, not person based. So I don't love a person and follow them unequivocally, and I don't hate people unequivocally. It's based on what they do and what they say.
Yeah, I totally agree. But I think that the majority of people, like obviously the people with the right ethics, like you, will admit that when they're wrong. But the it seems like the people who rise to the top just won't do that. It's like the people who rise to the top seem like they're like I've heard, I don't know how true it is, but I've heard that like sociopaths, rise to the top because they're they're sociopaths and like
Well,
they
I mean, yeah.
they just
Well, let me throw this at you. So I would say, and this harkens back to what I said about Congress. It's all system based. It's what the system rewards, because what happens is people will conform to the system of rewards in place, like rats in a maze. All right. We don't want to think of ourselves in that base way, but it's true. It's just human nature. For example, at the NSA, you were promoted more if you were a manager than if you weren't. And it was so obvious and so clear that people stumbled over each other to get into manager or semi manager roles, thus creating this huge glut of middle managers who didn't have enough to do, which created infighting, which created busy work, which created, falsification of promotion bullets. Just it was all based on just this one problem where they considered managers more promotable. That alone destroyed the entire system. That was the culturally biggest problem at the NSA.
so have they done anything about that
No, why
since?
would they? I mean, the
Well,
people who rose on that ladder are going to protect that ladder, if that makes sense. So why
yeah.
would they destabilize what they used to rise? And besides, by the time they got up there, they can't even see the issue anymore. They've become so indoctrinated. And I don't mean that like in a conspiracy kind of way. I just mean they spent decades maybe rising up through this system and adjusting their mentality to what rewards in that system. So there comes a point where they can't even see the problem anymore. It's not maliciousness, it's just they went through the grinder and came out
Yeah, and
baloney.
the thing with me is like I just like I can't play that game. So it's like it seems like when you get a bunch of people working together in a business, in an office or whatever, there automatically becomes this type of thing that you're explaining where it's essentially just corrupt, but it's like no morals, no ethic. It's just like it's like dog eat dog. Everybody's trying to get to the top and everybody's doing whatever they can to get to the top. And like as soon as I saw that, and like I said, some companies are better than others. They actually try and have a good culture or whatever. But when I saw that happening and I could tell that people were just backstabbing and shit, I'm like, I can't do this. Like I can't,
Right.
I'm not an actor. I can't bullshit. I can't kiss someone's ass fake, fakely. Like obviously if I think that you're doing something good, I'll tell you, but like I'm not just gonna kiss your ass just because you're my boss. And that's just me, and I just can't do it.
Right.
But I mean, clearly a lot of people I guess
Do
are fine with it. That's what I don't get in general with
well, they become
the
desperate.
workplace.
I mean, if the only way to advance is to become something you're not, you have only two choices: go silent and disconnected, or become that person. And
It,
unfortunately, a lot of people will choose to become what they're not.
it just seems that for some reason the whole workplace thing seems nuts to me because I mean when I was working the regular job, I like literally felt like like how they say like you know like you lose your soul or whatever. It's soul sucking. The job soul sucking, and like literally is soul sucking. Like where you have no, you're just a cog in the machine. And I understand people will say, oh, you only do it for 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, but it's like at least for one.
Yeah, right.
But two, it's like that's a good amount of your fucking time that you're being like a soulless cocksucker.
Yeah.
Excuse my
No,
language,
it's okay.
but
I know what you mean. I actually,
yeah,
I had a bit of a problem where I worked for a bully manager who was the way she was because of the system, but she passed the shit downwards. That's how it works. So basically, she was just this awful bully who just assaulted us constantly with put downs and jibes and micromanagement. And it
yeah,
got to the point where it was starting to test my values. And
yeah.
I very nearly gave up and just said, you know what, fuck it, I'm done fighting. I can't do this anymore. But that's not who I am. So I was able to renew my resolve and basically said, no, fuck you. And I'm not going to do what you say. And I'm not giving up.
But
And
then like that's like if you literally do it that way, that like that seems to like literally become a problem. Because I mean like when like you've been just browbeaten for years or whatever, and I don't really
right.
know what other term to use, but it seems like browbeaten's the right way to
Probably, yeah.
describe it. Yeah, You've been browbeaten for years or what, however long, and then you finally stand up for yourself and you say, and like obviously you shouldn't go about it this way, but like you literally are just like, you know what, fuck you, like I'm not taking this shit anymore. And then all of a sudden, like you're the one who's in trouble. You know what I mean?
Well, if in my case, I never shut up. I always pushed back. The difference is I stopped caring about the consequences of it. And more importantly, what I decided was whatever I do, being silent is the wrong choice. Okay, I got to work on my delivery. I got to not make people so defensive. I got to figure out how to work with these people. Sure, but not give up, not despair, not silence. So many people at the agency chose silence. I was warned repeatedly by coworkers not to rock the boat, not to make waves, just stay silent, stay out of sight. And that's something I essentially chose not to do. That's something I could not be.
Yeah. And I mean, I would honestly probably, I don't know. I mean, I would honestly probably go silent just because I almost feel like silence, it's your the way that you went about it is better than silence, but
Well, it was for me.
silence, it works, yeah, for you, but like for silence can be, I mean, when you have no other option, essentially, when you're in a situation where like at the Amazon warehouse, it's like I'm not going to be able to do anything. I saw that. Like maybe at the NSA, you were able to do something. When you're an Amazon worker, you have the low level, like you have no control
Right.
over anything. So it gets to a point where like you just shut up. I mean, I wouldn't say that I shut up. I didn't, but I still got mad, and I would still go to HR and I would still do things. But I kind of realized after a certain amount of time where I was like, I'm not going to change the system. I gotta quit. But then people always say, if you don't like it, quit, find another job. But like you said, most jobs are like that. Some jobs are worse. So you could go to a situation that's even worse, where the boss is even meaner than Amazon. And so yeah, I mean, what do we do? What do we do about this as a whole? I fear that it's kind of like,
Honestly, okay. So there's two ways we fix this. One, strong leadership. If we can convince the executive or the top executives that they actually have a problem and they need to start listening to people and to build their system in a way that encourages the good behavior and not the bad behavior, then the system becomes self-correcting, essentially. Right? That's what you're looking for. You're creating a system that fixes itself, that doesn't depend on uh, well, regardless, that's basically what it comes down to. So a strong system of communication and self-correction is basically what I'm talking about. And that's the whole point behind the Are You Listening book. Because if you're a leader who's ever surprised by what your people say in a survey, you did it wrong. Now, the other question that you had was, what do you do as an individual? Well, I didn't have any power either. The only thing I could do was speak out. And what I chose to do was to continue to speak out. Like I said, I had to work long and hard on getting to the point where I could say what I wanted to say without really pissing people off. But I never changed what I said. I never stopped speaking. And I think that that is one strategy, and it is noble, although challenging. But I also think silence can be too, right? Not participating, not reacting, just staying silent and ducking out. If that's all you can manage, no shame. I mean, what are you supposed to do, right? The only judgment I have is when people are given an opportunity to speak up and object and they don't, or they lie and they say, no, everything's fine. Oh, I like that manager. They're great. That you should not do. There's no excuse for that.
yeah. Well, I feel like they kind of called it the silent thing. I feel like they kind of a little while back they were saying silent quitting or whatever, or
Quiet
silent
quitting, yeah.
quiet quitting. And I kind of feel like that type of thing. It's like, well, if you're not going to treat me with respect, then I'm not going to treat you with respect. And I don't
Yeah.
even, I never really got to the bottom of exactly what quiet quitting meant. But the way I took it was like, I'm going to show up and I'm going to do the bare minimum.
That's quiet quitting.
Yeah. And it's like, if you don't like it, I guess just fire me. I mean,
Basically, yeah.
that's kind of like how the system's set up, where it's like you have no recourse against your
Abusers.
your abusers or your employer. So basically, all you can do is do what you do, which most people don't, or you quiet quit, and then I guess eventually you just get fired, and then you go on unemployment and you just find another job, and
Or you just
that's
start
not the
looking
right
for
way to
your
do it.
next job all day, every day instead of doing your job.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
there are lots of ways to just opt out essentially out of the system. And
Yeah.
what else can you expect when you treat people like dirt?
Yeah. And it seems like the whole system is kind of set up for that. And I think that's like the problem. And I think that's like what we were talking about before with politics. The whole system, even though we actually, what's funny is like we probably have one of the best systems, honestly, in the world. Maybe like Canada is better, or like, Switzerland, or like
Denmark
Norway.
or
Yeah.
something. Yeah.
But I mean, in terms of like some countries, you can't even speak. You can't even speak your mind. Like we were saying in China, like you just have to kind of say, you can't say much. But here we do have the opportunity to do that. But even in a good situation, like you're still completely oppressed by the 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 CEO overlords or whatever,
Right.
above you.
Right.
And I don't know. My way to do it is just be like, fuck it. You know what I mean? Like if I'm at a job where I'm being treated badly and bullshitted and disrespected, I just kind of like say fuck it and then
Yeah,
eventually
and
get fired, I
that's a very
guess.
natural response. Like I said, I have no objection to that. That's less your fault than it is the job. Because what I've learned is that the difference isn't the person, it's the management. In I mean, obviously, there's going to be exceptions where people are legitimate scrubs or whatever, but the vast majority of the time, a person's success depends on their platforms for success. Which, if a manager empowers them and gives them the opportunity to be good and do good, they will. They'll do good because who wants to just sit there bored all day doing nothing of value? Nobody. That's a waste of our life. We want to achieve, we want to succeed. Sometimes we're more invested in company success than they are if they would just let us be.
Yeah, which they don't. And I mean, I'm assuming that like when you bring up, why don't you ask about what's better or worse? I'm assuming their thinking is probably, oh, like there's too many of them, and like there's too many Amazon employees to go and see what each one wants.
Can you give
And
me
so,
just a second?
yeah, no problem.
Yeah, just a second. Yeah. One of many children was curious what I was doing.
Oh, no problem. Yeah, so at the NSA or at Amazon or wherever you are, I've always kind of like wondered that question. Why aren't they telling us what they're doing? Why aren't they asking us what's better for us? It seems like they're constantly making things worse. They
Yes.
want you to do more and more with less and less money and less um, things to do it with. And it's like I'm probably like they probably don't really want to deal with that because there's maybe too many, and like you would almost have to try and get everybody's opinion. That's probably what they're thinking is like it's too
It is.
complicated.
I've heard that before, yeah.
Yeah,
But it's
and
not true because it's easy to use tools and people to solve that problem, especially the higher you go. What excuse do you have for not having a communications team, right? Somebody who handles your blogs and your communication and your intake and then brings the important issues to you and manages this whole process. It's not hard, it's not complicated, it's not costly. The only reason that they're not doing it is they are ignorant of the need or they just don't want to.
yeah, and like I said, with Amazon, they did have stuff where like you had barely any time, like you knew about to get from point A to point B because the warehouse was so, and the bathroom was like far away, like the lunch was far away. To go to your car would take 15 minutes. But on the way out, they had like boards where you can like write stuff, like you can say how they could do it better. They had HR.
Right. But did they
They,
do anything with it?
I don't think they did. I think it was all, even at my job currently as the Amazon Flex driver. At the end of the day, they'll ask a question, and for a while I answered it every time, but I don't think they were doing anything. So now I
Right.
just like ignore it.
Right.
But I
Which
mean,
is
at
the natural
least
response. You didn't see any effect, so why keep doing it?
exactly, and they at least though have this culture of nicety. I think it was all bullshit, but at least they told their managers don't be an asshole to your employees. If they were, I think that would be an issue. If they were like,
Yeah, except here's the thing. So AOL was famously in trouble several years back because they got caught harassing a guy who was trying to cancel his account. Spent like 30 minutes on the phone, I can't remember, saying, cancel my account. I don't need the account. And the guy says, well, it shows you're still using it. And well, can I talk to your dad? I'm like 30 years old. What do you want to talk to my dad for? Just cancel the account. Just going on and on. And when they got caught on that and it went viral, they said, well, that's not our policy. Well, yeah, it is. You have a spoken policy and then you have a reward policy. And the one that wins is always the reward policy. It doesn't matter what you say, it matters what you award. So if you're saying don't be an asshole to your workers, but you're demanding that they be 8 hours on track and get this many packages out, and the only way you can do that is by making them pee into bottles, then that's what happens. So then the spoken policy is irrelevant.
Yeah, exactly. And and then on top of that, it's like they're mostly in that job, the delivery driver job, it's like there was really no benefit to doing better or to being there longer. Like there was no longevity increase because everybody kind of got the same amount of money. Everybody, it almost kind of got worse the longer you were there because like the more they would give you.
Right.
And so it's kind of like why do I, the only thing that you could really do in the driving job was like become a dispatcher. And it was like, I didn't really even want to be a dispatcher. So the longer you're there, the more you're kind of just like, why am I even still here? I might as well just go to like another
Yeah.
company and start at the bottom because I'm not getting paid more. I'm not getting better routes or any type
Yeah.
of
You followed the system of rewards. I mean, it's really that simple. And
yeah.
why not? We pick what's the best for us. If we can find a job that makes us feel fulfilled and we're doing something of value and we get paid well, yeah, okay, sure. But otherwise, why would we be loyal to somebody? There's no sense in that.
Yeah, exactly. So is there anything else that you wanted to cover in terms of like your book or just like the workplace environments for the NSA or anywhere else?
No, just that it really seemed like, other than the fact that the NSA is just such an interesting and unique example, the lessons in the book are the things you see everywhere. I've heard the same things online in the on Reddit and in social pages everywhere. Everyone tells the same story because it's always the same problem. Execs that get way too distant and no longer see, no longer hear, and don't know how to connect with people. And because of that, they miss all this important information, or they're assholes. And in either case, there's no accountability because those systems of communication, those systems of whistleblowing, they're all broken. And until those are fixed, we're just going to keep this cycle going forever.
Yeah, I mean, and at least with the internet now, like with Reddit and stuff, like you said, if I go on the Reddit Amazon delivery driver page, everyone's just fucking complaining. I got
Oh, or
fired. Like,
Glassdoor, even better.
yeah, I haven't been on Glassdoor, but yeah, any of these places you can just go on there, and so it's like they must know that these people just in not only I don't want to keep talking about Amazon, but I don't
It's
know
your
if the
family reference. It's fine.
yeah, I don't want to like take over but for the NSA, like do they have like some sort of online board that you can go to talk with other coworkers off the clock about things?
Yes, I did.
Was it
And but the thing
Glassdoor?
is,
Or?
they treated it as like a stress relief mechanism. They didn't take it seriously. And so it's kind of like you're bored. Here's what's wrong today. Well, it gave you something to write on, and maybe that keeps you, placid for a little bit longer, but it doesn't actually do anything. So what's the point? The only the only real value that those boards had is it gave me a lot of data for my book.
Did you like take down all the information on the board? Or I
Oh
guess you
yeah,
can go
I
back
have
on there.
I have
Yeah.
quotes. I have over 1,000 quotes from about 700 employees about how bad it was, the various abuses that they suffered, the various times the agency abused the system, falsified records, all kinds of stuff. They're trying to block it, but I'm working on it. I'm trying to get that out. The book itself only contains a few quotes, but they're definitely not. Yeah, they're like, we have to take a polygraph exam to work there, and that whole process is extremely abusive and causes lasting psychological damage. It's a real problem.
Oh wow, just taking the polygraph exam is
Well,
like,
I mean, being doubted, having your job on the line, whether or not you can make the lines on the paper look nice for some, random person you don't know. With people who have anxiety or on the autism spectrum, Asperger's, that's a serious problem. And it can leave them with some intense trauma.
yeah. Was that during the job or was that before you got the job you had to do that?
Before and during, you take it occasionally.
And would it ask you some like gnarly questions and stuff or
For
what?
some people, I've heard that they've yelled at them, accused them, dug into previous sexual assault and re-traumatized them, all kinds of things. Some people came out of the polygraph, basically decided they were going to quit. Some people attempted suicide
Just because of the polygraph?
because of the polygraph and what it represents and the stress of it and so on. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I get it. And then yeah, like at Amazon, like when you went in, first of all, you couldn't have your phone on you. And then when you went in, you had to go through like a metal detector with security every
That's
time.
weird. So did we.
Yeah. And they eventually, I think that during COVID, I know they brought the phones back and then they eventually got sued for the security thing because they put the security thing before you could clock in. So
Okay.
you would literally be dealing, you could be dealing 5, 10 minutes just waiting in that security line
And
before
not
you
getting
got
paid
in.
for it. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's bullshit.
exactly. Yeah. And that, I mean, that type of thing can kind of, I mean, obviously a security check isn't like that big of a deal, but it can cause some sort of
Are you sure?
psychological,
Because
yeah.
I feel like it is.
It
And
feels like you're in like a prison or
that's
something,
the
you
thing.
know?
It's not our place to judge. It's the place of the people who are saying there's a problem. You have to evaluate that. You can't just assume it's not true. You can't. You might be surprised how many people told me polygraph. It was no big deal. What is everybody worried about? Well, if you actually listened and looked, you would know. You can't just assume that because just because it was easy for you doesn't mean it's easy for someone else. Like
Yeah.
the rape survivor who was re-traumatized when somebody dug way into that, like, well, were they on top of you, or whatever, or people who demanded names and passwords of your accounts online, which they cannot do, but who's going to stop them?
Yeah. I remember I went in like a long time ago, I went into like a mall security job and they had me do, it wasn't a polygraph, but they had me answer questions or whatever. It
Okay.
was some sort of test to figure out what kind of person you were. And they asked some like gnarly questions. It was like, have you ever murdered someone? Have you ever raped
Mm.
someone? Have you ever like molested a child or whatever? And it was like somewhat traumatizing to be even asked the questions because you're like,
Yes.
no, you know what I mean? But like you do get kind of like shaken from even just because you're being treated as if you're,
Yes.
an
A suspect.
offender or something. Yeah. So are there any, I had to ask, I know for the FBI, there's some sort of like weird, well, I don't even know if this is true, but I saw it in a movie recently where there's like kind of like some weird intuition type test. I don't know if the NSA has those, but yeah, did you guys have anything like that? Like where you would like see videos and you would have to like say a number or a color or something that like
Yeah,
related
no,
to
I
it?
don't know anything about that.
No. Okay. You know what I'm talking about though, the FBI has something like that or no?
uh, yeah, I don't know much about the FBI, honestly.
Okay.
Nothing that isn't already public, anyway.
Yeah. So in terms of the future, obviously we can only do what we can do, but in terms of being like a capitalist society or whatever, like do you think there's any other options like overall, like socialism or some people are into communism or whatever? Like do you think there's any ways the government can move towards a better system in whole?
I think I think our system is salvageable. We'll see. But the key is that we need to have actual accountability. It's the same thing with the NSA and all these other toxic environments. There just needs to be visibility and accountability. Those two things will fix most ills, to be honest. For example, if people knew how corrupt the people in Congress were, then maybe we would vote for better people. If we forced them to uh, have term limits so that they couldn't be bought by these big companies, it's not worth the investment if they're only there for a couple of years. You see what I mean? Or maybe
Yeah.
they don't lose their values in that amount of time. It's the longer you're there, though, the easier it is to test the boundaries and push those boundaries. And the
Yeah.
same is true of everything else. Like if, for example, the military people who lead the NSA were called out on this idea that, officers make more money, managers are like officers, so managers must get all the money. If they were actually made to face the fact that this is causing all of these problems, and you're dead wrong, that is not how a civilian agency works, then theoretically things would improve. At the very least, it's worth a shot.
Yeah, and I don't really know how much work the upper guys are actually doing. Obviously, I don't know what like Mark Zuckerberg or Bezos is doing, but it almost seems like the people who are working the hardest at the bottom are making less money than the people at the top.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
once
that's
again,
pretty
I really,
typical.
yeah, you know what I mean? It's like there seems like there's a problem there when like we were saying with Elon Musk, the people who are inventing the robot or
Ah,
the rockets and everything else,
yeah.
they're making less than the $400 billion.
So, corollary to what you asked, I do think that a huge component of fixing what's broken in this country is representation at the bottom, and that either means unions or co-ops. Essentially, there needs to be a fourth control. It can't just be the three branches of the government. There needs to be worker representation too. And
Yeah.
right now, there just isn't any. So if we mass bring back unions, that would be a big way to solve it. Or co-ops, no more CEOs. Just everyone is an owner in this company. Everyone has a voice. No more
Yeah, I
kingdoms.
feel like I've heard that's part of like a socialist type thing where like everybody has some sort of stake in the company.
I mean, that might be a tenet of socialism, but I I think that a degree of that is an important control even on capitalism. I think capitalism can work. It just needs rigorous boundaries and controls and safety levers.
Yeah, I think I agree. And yeah, and I think that like you said before, people are just so tired of everything, and it's like I've kind of gotten to a point where like I don't try with much because nothing seems to. It almost seems like one of those things where like the more you try and fix a problem, like the worse it gets or whatever. And I'm not saying that's the truth, and I think that people should try. But I like you'll hear about these union, like Amazon had unions recently, but then I don't really know if they're actually going to go into effect. Like, have they gone into effect? Are they going to? I don't know. So it almost kind of seems like you'll hear about stuff in the news that's happening, and then like you just don't really know whatever happened to it.
Right.
But yeah, I wanted to ask.
Noise without substance, it's useless.
Yeah, exactly. So I wanted to ask you real quick about, I guess, how you thought Biden did. I've already kind of asked you where you think the country's going, but like, do you think Trump's actually going to be able to do? And it sounds like you say yes, you do. But where do you see this country in 4 years? And then yeah,
On our current pace, I think we're doomed. Unless somebody
completely
stops
doomed.
Trump, we're completely doomed. I think
Within 4 years,
yes.
or
I,
even maybe longer if he
I don't
stays
think
in.
there. I don't think if he keeps testing boundaries and finding that there are no guardrails and Trump doesn't die of old age or whatever, I think we're going to end up with a monarchy or a dictatorship or something because there are what would stop him? Trump definitely wouldn't back down of his own accord. That's not who he is.
That just seems so crazy, even for loyalists to be like, we're gonna now become a monarchy or a dictatorship or whatever. It's just
I
nuts.
it seems to follow exactly with what they've done. No matter what he does or says, they always back him. And if they don't, they're immediately punished until they come back into line. You remember
And
when Kyle Rittenhouse said he wasn't going to vote for Trump?
did he?
He did.
That's
And then how quickly the MAGA crowd jumped all over him and he relented so hard, so fast.
why wasn't he gonna vote for Trump? What was his reason? He
I
just
don't even remember. I barely care about
yeah,
that guy.
yeah. I feel like most of the people you see on TV or YouTube or whatever, like Ben Shapiro and all those people, and this could be true for the left too, but are they must be in a situation where they're doing audience capture or whatever, where like their audience is just forcing them to believe certain things. Because I'm like, you like Ben Shapiro, I see him as a pretty smart. I don't like him, but I see him as a smart guy. Like, how could you be so fucking stupid to be
Right.
backing these things?
Yeah, you can very easily get swept up in things. It's very important to stay true to your values, keep to your perspective, and it's also very easy to lose those. And if we're going to save this country, we need to make it a lot harder to become like that.
That's a hard thing to stop, I think, because like when you have money kind of forcing you to be a certain way, it's a
Right.
hard. I think that's a hard thing to hard. Like, how
Well,
would you prevent it? You know what I mean?
you make it harder to do by first of all education. You make spotting scams and manipulation part of public education. You make sure that the schools are well funded by people who are held accountable for how they teach, whether or not they're teaching things like the earth is flat or whatever, because some teachers do. That's a problem, you know um, or bringing politics into the classroom or religion. Those are things that don't belong there. You teach how to be a citizen, how to use our country, how to hold it accountable. All that stuff should just be baked in. And if that is part of our culture, then it becomes immensely harder for people to become captive to things like fake news and manipulation and propaganda. Because the educated people I know will actually fact check the things they see and go, oh, okay, that's bullshit. Whereas you had the people that listened to these shock jocks like Rush Limbaugh, who he would just shout things loudly and people would be like, wow, that's amazing. Like, what do you mean, wow, that's amazing? He just said something that's completely untrue, but they believed it, and then they get deeper and deeper into it, and then the psychology becomes that sunk cost fallacy where you can't escape, because the pain of admitting you were wrong means you have to unravel possibly years worth of belief and angry rants that you had with friends and family who you now realize, you know, maybe you have some apologies to do, and facing that reality is so hard that they just disassociate and go full full cult.
Yeah. I mean, how do you think Biden and the liberals did in terms of trying to prevent this? Because I've heard
They're
that they kind of,
cowards. They're
yeah.
cowards, and they allowed this to happen just the same as Obama did. It was the one big complaint I had about Obama, is that he allowed the bad things to happen through their cowardice. Honestly, they should have been bolder. They should have done more. And the other bigger problem is that our measure of societal um, uh, prosperity is based on people who can own stocks. I literally never had stocks until maybe a year and a half ago, you know, 2 or 3 years, whatever, because I couldn't afford that. Their whole model of prosperity is based on a fantasy that only exists for the very highest end of Americans. I don't think your average person has that kind of disposable income, that they're not measuring it based on things that actually matter to real people.
Yeah.
So our entire model is wrong.
Yeah. I totally agree. And it almost seems like the American dream, I don't know, at this point is, almost dead
Pretty much. I
unless
mean,
you're like
who
ultra
could afford a
wealthy.
house at this point? I mean, come on. The place I'm renting would cost me almost $2 million to buy.
And I live in California, so
Oh, well, then maybe you know too.
it's even worse. Yeah. Are you in the Maryland, Virginia
Seattle.
area? Oh, you're in Seattle now. So you
I
so
am in
you
Seattle.
did you move away from there, or were you working for the
Yeah, well,
NSA from Seattle?
my family was West Coast to begin with, so I always was trying to get back here. So I left. I left the agency to go to Microsoft. I was still in a cleared job though, and then the agency pulled my clearance. I had to leave Microsoft, and now I work for a local company
Okay. So you went to Microsoft after the
willingly.
NS after the NSA?
Correct.
And I wanted to ask you real quick about Bill Gates. We were talking about the money thing. Do you think that
Yeah.
he's doing good with money, or do you think he's kind of full of shit with all that?
I think Bill Gates did well. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is reportedly one of the best and most effective charitable organizations in the world. I do think that Bill Gates was not the visionary or expert that people sometimes make him out to be. He was more of a businessman, but not as opportunistic and evil as some, my opinion. But I still think that the system needs to be designed to prevent people from becoming that rich and siphoning off that much money, because it always comes with consequences. There's a reason that Microsoft got sued for monopoly. It's because they were, way back when, and even now it's problematic.
Yeah, and it's weird how he suddenly got accused of being this evil dude, but then meanwhile, like Bezos, Musk, and Zuckerberg, and all these, and the Google guy are like all at the inauguration. Somehow they've accepted those tech billionaires, but Bill Gates has been thrown to the wolves.
It depends on if he kisses the ring. Remember, loyalists.
Yeah. So yeah, the last question that I ask everybody is if you have anything to plug, your book, if you have, do you have a podcast?
I do not. Wouldn't know where to start, honestly, but I do try to do my best on my website. I've got a mailing list that you can sign up for, and when you do, you get a free copy of that mini book that explains my feelings about Snowden, the agency, the government oversight, and the whole story about how they pulled my clearance and why I believe that that was a retaliation. Um, and you can sign up for that on thegeekprofessor.com. And You can also look me up at jeremyduffy.com, either of those things. And right now, I'm just trying to get that book published, and it's right in the sidebar. It's easy to see. So you just click on that. You can sign up for my mailing list for updates, and it's only updates for the book. I don't mail anything else. I'm not an asshole.
And what else was I going to ask? Oh, I'm blinking. Yeah. So there was another question I wanted to ask, but yeah. So the I always ask, are there any podcasts, movies, TV shows, music, anything you wanna? I know it's a weird question, but I'm always looking for stuff to listen to. So
Oh, I see.
what are you into
What would I
these days?
recommend?
Yeah.
Well, I one thing that I recently recommended is to, if you're on Blue Sky, which I am, anything that's not Twitter, look up the big companies, nonprofits that are actually trying to help us. The ACLU, the Electronic Freedom Foundation, the EFF, Public Citizen is a good one. And I felt like there was another, but it's escaped me right now. ProPublica. So these are the ones that I would follow and pay attention to. Uh, and that's kind of it, honestly. Yeah.
Are those all just like Blue Sky accounts? Or are they
Yeah, they're
podcasts
just
or?
accounts on Blue Sky, but they're always posting about modern issues, current problems, what you can do to help, how you can help prevent the gradual slide into destruction, etc.
Yeah. So I remember what I was going to say. Yeah. So I think that you have I mean, honestly, I think you have a hard battle against the NSA because it's the NSA and it's the big government. But I also think that it's a really good thing that like draws people in. Like if you were working for, McDonald's or something or whatever,
Yeah, maybe they wouldn't care as much.
yeah, they'd be, oh, whatever. But like the fact that you have the NSA, I think it's probably a definite attractor to, that's interesting. What's going on with the NSA?
Well, I
How are
hope so.
they? Yeah.
Hopefully it draws enough attention I can get this book published, and we'll see.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, thanks for coming on. It was great talking to you, Jeremy.
It was a
And
pleasure.
if you can, just send me whatever link you want me to throw up there for your book or whatever else.
Yeah, right. Email or the chat here, which would you prefer?
Or the email. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll do the email. All right. Well, thank you,
All right.
sir.
All right. Thanks for listening, guys. Bye.
Have a good one.